Well, thank you for the invitation, and I am actually a licensed architect, not in the United States, in Europe. So that's very important. You know, I need to emphasize that. I came to the research as a practitioner in early 2000. A few of us arrived in Berkeley, UC Berkeley Institute of Urban Design and Regional Development, from Brazil, Korea, Germany, Cambridge University, and there were 3 of us from Germany, and we just accidentally arrived at a piece of article that was being mailed around to the visiting scholars, and a New York Times article that was titled "Every sixth city in the world is shrinking." So that started just a debate amongst us, because we found that each of us could tell a few stories, and it's kind of also, it was mind-boggling. How is that? We only hear about cities growing, and you know, anyway, that led to a few meetings and really starting a series of really looking into what's out there in terms of academic research on declining cities around the world. So we came up with a few questions and decided, first of all, we found out there's hardly any coherent study on this very important topic out there. And secondarily, that we were really, that there was a need to address that more globally and more concisely as a comparative study. So really the IURD took this, this group under its wing, and we originally used to call ourselves the Shrinking Cities group. We really started about kind of rationalize the research in 2 parts. The first part was the question of can we figure out a typology of decline around the world? And the second group had to, or was more interested into strategies of revitalization. So in other words, what was the key points to note about cities that had managed to reinvent themselves? Which was really the group I got involved in as a practitioner, as an architect. I was really interested in the role of architecture in translating economic development in a more practical way, perhaps, if possible, in a more visionary way, rather than to be at the, I had observed it in many big cities, that economic development was usually at the mercy, or the pace setters were the developers and investors, and not maybe always enough a vision, sort of looking at it as a more connecting vital issue. Going back to Shrinking Cities research, these days we are called SCIRN, which is the abbreviation for Shrinking Cities International Researchers Network. And let's see what slide I have for you. Yes. If you go to shrinkingcities.org, there you will find basically what our mission is and what we've been doing for these past years. But also here you'll find about each of us, and you know, here you can read. I don't know if anybody had time. Would you be interested to go over this? Basically, what I explained, that you know, we started small. There was 8 of us, and now we're really our scholars are from all over the world, and we're doing publishing nonstop. Fortunately or unfortunately, we in US haven't managed to actually get a great funding to do a much bigger gatherings and kind of. But my European colleagues actually got a huge grant from the European Union, and there is a lot more work that has been produced in the past few years. Also, interestingly enough, the word shrinking cities is not a very good way to put the problem, because if you address cities in terms of shrinking cities, usually those are cities that are struggling and trying very hard to show themselves as a growing city and not as a declining city. So we figured that maybe that's something we need to change. Anyway, in 2006, 2007, we organized, a colleague of mine and myself, who were the only remaining two people. Everybody had gone back to their home country, but we were still working as a group.
So the project was shrinking, that was
But the project actually wasn't shrinking. We just kept growing, but the physical presence wasn't there. But the project was very much on the go, yes. We had a 2-day conference at Berkeley that was really incredible in terms of the number of people who attended it. And we, as you can see, we had all, again, divided the topic to US, Europe, and Asian cities, but also shrinking and strategies of revitalization. But also the attendance and the question and answers at the end, they were just really of high quality. Again, this publication is available at that website if anybody is interested. You have each of us that talked as a PDF file. There are really amazing GIS maps that show you these patterns of growth and shrinkage. And you might even be familiar with some of these people. Roland Stanley, I invited him to join. At the time, he was the urban development guy in downtown. He's left town now, and he's working at the mayor's office. So this was really the beginning. If you go to our website, you will find links to all our the work that's been done, that's happening in France and other cities, and really very interesting material. Now, where did all this soul searching go as far as I was concerned? I was very much interested in the practice of understanding I guess economic development strategies and in its applications spatially. If there was a lot of talk, I mean, really in a nutshell, you're all familiar. I mean, it's all very academic. You know, we have moved from the industrial economy to the idea economy, and then there are all these charts. But the key question for me was what needs to change in our cities when we think urban development, when we think, you know, about the idea economy. How do you make space? How do you develop spaces that promote the idea economy and vis-a-vis innovation, which is at the core? How can design make a more meaningful contribution to our cities, communities, and how can design contribute to having more sustainable cities? So I actually was going to write a paper comparing a US city to a European city, but I just visited a friend in St. Louis, and I was absolutely blown away with the city of St. Louis. And so I just started, you know, spending more time and talking to people. First of all, in terms of the architectural backdrop in St. Louis, and you could tell, wow, you know, and not being from this country, you could immediately see that, you know, St. Louis used to be a place, but you could see there's hardly anybody around compared to the big cities, and what was going on here. Anyway, the short of it is, after a while, I got involved with, you know, interviewing people. I wasn't quite sure where the research is going to take me, but I was invited to an idea charrette for the Gateway Mall in downtown. And I think as the center here also emphasizes, interdisciplinarity is a key issue in our times. And I think it's quite clear, if you look at the city and how it's fragmented, you see the imprint of actually the disconnectivity between very important anchor institutions, for example. I can represent this again in spatial terms, but just going back to this slide, I spent a long time in, I lived a long time in Silicon Valley in the Bay Area, and because of my research, I was invited by the Economic Development Agency in San Jose to kind of brainstorm for a major event where you would talk about the creative cities, the innovative cities, and Mr. Seeley Brown of Palo Alto Innovation Park was one of our keynote speakers, and I borrowed this slide from him because really the bottom line was, how was it that Silicon Valley became such a key place, played the role it played in setting pace with technological development and kind of making California the booming state in the country that it was. And it all really started with the Stanford and the places like the Palo Alto Innovation Park. And he was saying, well, basically what we did right from the start when he took over, it was to put the right brain people next to the left brain people. Mm-hmm. So instead of having these highways of discipline where you have, you know, as it is at the universities and as it is in working spaces, these kind of highways and ghettos of just one discipline and not necessarily merging and crossing paths, but actually literally making it happen within those spaces in the Palo Alto Innovation Park. A few things have happened in these last decades. Is kind of, how do we measure how vital our cities are? And there is a group out of Chicago that's been responsible for a series of creating indicators that you can measure how vital your city is. And I'm introducing just the key ones they have come up with. You know, you should measure how do you measure how talented your city is? Well, you know, just to give you an example, you know, to see the statistic of college attainment and, you know, international talent and the title of the innovative city, you know, how many patents are actually made in your city, and how many people are self-employed and small businesses, the connected city, how many people go to vote, etc., etc. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory, and one of my favorite is the weirdness factor, what they academically, you know, they put it as distinctive city. Well, it is something like when I came here, and it just was like this wow effect, like St. Louis and all the architecture and the way it was clear that there was a time that there was a vision here, and but also, what was that? Missed something, sorry. But also, you know, how many foreign movies get rented in this city, you know, and which kind of brings you to the diversity factor, you know, how diverse is your city. So interestingly enough, you can measure all that, and you can immediately come up with very helpful ways of or suggestions what needs maybe tackling or promoting if you were in the mayor's office or if you're in the leadership. Yeah, this is about the innovative city. And for each of those sections, they're taken statistics from all over the country. And well, it's a very different time now. This was done in mid-2000. But what's noteworthy here, Las Vegas was one of the cities that was growing fastest, top few that was growing, but on the chart where you are measuring creativity, it was absolutely in a deficit. So it was more about consumption than production of ideas, and by the same token, the other cities. So if you speak of a vibrant city, this didn't fit within that. They didn't pass the test. And I guess again, as thinking spatially, it's nothing new to kind of do the landmark type of architecture where your city suddenly becomes present on the map. The Guggenheim Center, Frank Gehry's building, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, was a key in putting Bilbao on the map. Nobody knew before this building came up where Bilbao was. But it's not, if you pay attention, it's not just any building. It's a building that's pushing the envelope. And it's pushing the envelope through technology. And it's doing something more than just being a building. It's really about sort of the zeitgeist, how you apply form to all this latest advancement of what's technologically is possible, and it manifests itself in an architectural form, but also rethinking the way we do things, and we've been doing things for years. So I kind of put these slides together just to give an example. What is at the core of the creative economy? What is it that we need to invest in? A whole new typology of spaces were created. The virtual universities, and basically talent is at the core, and sort of trying to keep talent in the cities became what most regions were competing for.